What happens when America's favorite country star walks onto one of the biggest morning shows in television history, only to find himself trapped in a verbal ambush that would end his appearance in the most shocking way imaginable? It only took 48 seconds of condescending remarks from someone who thought their position made them untouchable for Blake Shelton to make a decision that would stun everyone watching. The morning started like any other at the Good Morning America studios in Times Square. Blake Shelton had arrived early, his usual easygoing demeanor putting the crew at ease as they prepared for what was supposed to be a simple interview about his upcoming album and tour dates. The country superstar settled into the curved couch, flanked by the panel, Lara Spencer, Michael Strahan, Robin Roberts, and George Stephanopoulos. The cameras rolled, the lights blazed, and what began as standard morning television quickly transformed into something none of them could have predicted. Lara Spencer kicked things off with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "So Blake, we're here to talk about your new music, but honestly, I think everyone's more interested in hearing about how you're managing to stay relevant in today's music scene. Country music isn't exactly what it used to be, is it?" Blake's smile faltered just slightly, but he recovered with the grace of someone who'd done 1,000 interviews. "Well, I think country music is stronger than ever, actually. We've got incredible talent coming up, and the fans are more passionate than they've ever been." "That's a diplomatic answer," Lara interrupted, leaning forward with that look of someone who thinks they're about to make great television. "But let's be honest with each other here. When was the last time you had a #1 hit? I mean, a real #1 hit that people actually remember?" The other panelists exchanged quick glances. Robin Roberts shifted uncomfortably in her seat, while Michael Strahan cleared his throat. George Stephanopoulos looked down at his notes, suddenly very interested in the paper in front of him. Blake's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "I had a top 5 hit just last year, Lara, and I think the millions of people who bought tickets to my sold-out tour would say they remember the music pretty well." "Top 5, Lara repeated, her voice dripping with something that wasn't quite mockery but wasn't far from it. "That must be quite the adjustment for someone who used to dominate the charts. Tell me, is that why you've been clinging to the voice for so long? Because the music career isn't quite panning out the way it used to?" Robin Roberts finally spoke up, her voice gentle but firm. "Lara, I think Blake has had an incredible career on The Voice. He's mentored some amazing artists." "Oh, I'm not saying he hasn't," Lara replied, waving her hand dismissively without taking her eyes off Blake. "I'm just asking the questions our viewers want answered. We're all thinking it, so why not say it out loud?" "Blake, do you think you're using television to compensate for a declining music career?" The studio fell into an uncomfortable silence. Blake sat perfectly still for a moment, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that hadn't been there before. "I don't think my career is declining, Lara. I think I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing, and I'm grateful for every opportunity I've had." "But you have to admit," Lara pressed on, clearly not satisfied with his response, "there's something a little desperate about a country singer in his late 40s still trying to convince people he's got something new to offer. I mean, haven't we heard it all before from you? Same sound, same image, same everything. When do we get something fresh?" Michael Strahan jumped in, his voice carrying a note of warning. "I think Blake has consistently evolved his sound over the years." "Has he, though?" Lara turned to Michael with that same condescending smile. "Or has he just been recycling the same formula, hoping nobody notices?" "I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying to have an honest conversation here." Blake leaned back in his seat, his eyes never leaving Lara's face. "You know what's interesting, Lara? You talk about honesty, but what you're really doing is trying to tear someone down on national television because you think it makes for good ratings. That's not journalism. That's not even entertainment. That's just cruelty dressed up as curiosity." The air in the studio changed immediately. The crew member standing off camera froze. Robin Roberts' eyes widened slightly. George Stephanopoulos finally looked up from his notes, his expression alert. Lara's smile didn't waver, but something sharp flashed in her eyes. "Oh, so now we're being sensitive? Blake, this is Good Morning America. This is where we have real conversations with real people about real issues. If you can't handle a few tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be here." "Tough questions?" Blake's voice rose just slightly. "Tough questions would be asking me about the creative process behind my new album. Tough questions would be about the challenges of balancing touring with family life. What you're doing isn't tough questioning. You're sitting here, on your platform, using your position to make someone feel small because you think you can get away with it. I think you're being overly dramatic. Lara shot back, her voice taking on a harder edge. This is how interviews work. I ask questions, you answer them. If you don't like the questions, that says more about you than it does about me. Robin Roberts tried again, her voice more insistent this time. Maybe we should move on to talking about Blake's tour dates. Blake, I know you're heading to several cities. But Lara wasn't finished. No, I want to address this. Blake, you're acting like I've done something terrible. Here, all I've done is point out some facts. Your chart performance isn't what it was 10 years ago. That's not an opinion, that's data. Your sound hasn't evolved significantly. That's not an attack, that's an observation. And yes, you've been on The Voice for over a decade, which some people might see as a safety net. These are legitimate topics of discussion. Blake stood up abruptly, the microphone clipped to his shirt, pulling against its wire. A production assistant rushed forward but stopped short, unsure of what to do. Blake reached down and unclipped the microphone himself, his movements deliberate and controlled. You want to talk about facts, Lara? Blake's voice was quiet now, but it carried through the studio like thunder. Here's a fact. I came here this morning as a guest on your show. I didn't come here to be insulted. I didn't come here to be talked down to. And I certainly didn't come here to sit and smile while someone with a superiority complex tries to make themselves feel important by diminishing everything I've worked for over the past 25 years. George? Stephanopoulos held up his hand. Blake, please, let's all take a breath here. No, George, I'm done taking breaths, Blake continued, his eyes still locked on Lara. You know what the real issue is here? It's not my chart positions. It's not my sound. It's not my television work. The real issue is that you decided, before I even sat down, that you were going to make this interview about putting me in my place. And why? Because it makes you feel powerful? Because you think tearing down a guest is what good television looks like? Lara's composure finally cracked, just a little. Her smile faded and her voice turned cold. I think you need to remember where you are right now. This is my show. This is my set. And if you can't handle the heat of a real interview, then maybe you should stick to softball questions on entertainment shows where everyone just tells you how wonderful you are. Your show? Blake let out a short, humorless laugh. This stopped being about the show the moment you decided to use it as a platform to stroke your own ego. You hide behind this idea that you're being a tough interviewer, but really, you're just being cruel. And the worst part is, you don't even see it. You actually think what you're doing right here is good. Michael Strahan stood up, his massive frame creating a physical barrier between Blake and Lara. Okay, everybody, let's just calm down for a second. Blake, we value you being here. Lara, maybe we got a little off track. Off track? Lara stood up as well, her voice rising to match Blake's earlier volume. I'm doing my job. If Blake Shelton can't handle a little criticism, if he's so fragile that he needs everyone to constantly validate him, then that's his problem, not mine. Maybe that's why his career is where it is. Maybe that's why he needs television to stay relevant. Because he can't handle the reality that the music industry has moved on without him. The silence that followed was deafening. Robin Roberts closed her eyes briefly, as if she couldn't bear to watch what was happening. George Stephanopoulos opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Michael Strahan's hand moved toward Blake's shoulder, but stopped mid-air. Blake nodded slowly, a sad smile crossing his face. And there it is, the real Lara Spencer. Everyone, not the cheerful morning show host, not the professional interviewer, just someone who gets their kicks from kicking people when they're sitting right in front of them. Oh, please, Lara scoffed, crossing her arms. Don't play the victim here. You're a wealthy, successful man who's had every advantage in the world handed to him. Forgive me if I don't feel sorry for you because someone finally asked you real questions instead of kissing your boots. Blake placed the microphone on the couch carefully, almost gently, as if he was taking great care not to damage it. You know what the saddest part of all this is, Lara? It's that you genuinely believe you're the hero of this story. You think you're the brave interviewer, asking the tough questions that need to be asked. But you're not. You're just someone who forgot that there's a human being sitting across from you. Someone with feelings, with a family, with a career they've built through hard work and dedication. And you decided that none of that matters because getting your moment, getting your viral clip, is more important than basic human decency. How dare you? Lara's voice shook with anger. How dare you come onto this set and lecture me about decency? I have been in this industry for decades. I have interviewed presidents, celebrities, world leaders. I don't need some country singer with wounded pride telling me how to do my job. Then maybe you should already know how to do it, Blake replied quietly. Because what you did here today isn't interviewing, it's something else entirely. And I think deep down, you know that. Robin Roberts finally stood, her voice cutting through the tension. Blake, we appreciate you coming on the show. Perhaps we could reschedule this conversation for another time, when everyone's had a chance to cool down. Blake turned to Robin, and his expression softened. Robin, you've always been nothing but kind and professional. Same with you, Michael, George. But I won't be rescheduling. I won't be coming back. Because as long as someone like her, he gestured toward Lara without looking at her, is allowed to treat guests this way without consequence, this show isn't a place I want to be. You're making a huge mistake, Lara said, her voice tight. Walking off this set, burning this bridge. Do you have any idea how many artists would kill for this opportunity? How many people would love to be sitting where you were sitting? Blake finally turned back to face her one last time. Then I hope when they sit there, they get treated better than I did. I hope you find it in yourself to remember that the people you interview are more than just content for your show. They're people. They deserve respect. And if you can't give them that, then maybe you're the one who needs to reevaluate whether you should be sitting in that chair. Get out, Lara said, her face flushed. Just get out. We don't need you here. We don't need your self-righteous speech. We'll find someone better to fill your segment. Someone who actually wants to be here. Lara, George Stephanopoulos finally found his voice, standing up quickly. That's enough. Blake, I apologize for how this went. This isn't how we normally conduct interviews. Could have fooled me, Blake said, but there was no anger in his voice anymore, just exhaustion. Look, I know you all have a job to do. I know morning television is competitive, and you need to create moments that get people talking, but there's a line. And what happened here today crossed it. Michael Strahan stepped closer to Blake, his voice low and sincere. Man, I'm sorry. This got way out of hand. It's not your fault, Michael, Blake said, shaking the former football star's hand. You tried to keep the peace. You all did, except for one person. And that person made it clear that I'm not welcome here unless I'm willing to be a punching bag for their entertainment. Lara threw her hands up in exasperation. This is unbelievable. You're all acting like I committed some kind of crime. I ask questions. That's literally my job. If he can't handle it, that's on him. You didn't ask questions. Blake turned back one final time, his voice steady and clear. You attacked. There's a difference, and the fact that you can't see that difference is exactly why I'm leaving. Robin Roberts walked over to Blake, her hand gently touching his arm. Blake, for what it's worth, I think you handled this with incredible grace under very difficult circumstances. Thank you, Robin. That means a lot. Coming from you, Blake said sincerely. He looked around the studio one last time, at the crew members who had stopped pretending to work and were now openly watching the scene unfold. To everyone behind the cameras, you all do incredible work. This isn't about you. This is about one person who forgot that power comes with responsibility. Oh, spare us the philosophy lesson, Lara called out. But her voice had lost some of its earlier conviction. You're just upset because someone finally called you out on your mediocrity. You can dress it up however you want, but that's what this is really about. Your ego couldn't handle the truth. Blake paused at the edge of the set, his hand on one of the large cameras. He looked back at Lara with something that might have been pity. If that's what you need to tell yourself to sleep tonight, then go ahead. But we both know what really happened here, and so does everyone else in this room. George Stephanopoulos stepped forward, his journalist instincts clearly warring with his role as co-host. Blake, I hope you know that this doesn't represent what Good Morning America stands for. We pride ourselves on respectful dialogue. I appreciate that, George. Blake nodded. But respectful dialogue requires all parties to be respectful, and I think we can all agree that wasn't the case today. Lara laughed, but it was a brittle sound. This is absurd. You're all treating him like he's some kind of hero for throwing a tantrum and walking off set. He's not brave. He's not taking some noble stand. He's running away because he couldn't handle a little pushback. A little pushback, Blake repeated slowly. You called my career declining. You said I was desperate. You suggested I'm using television as a crutch because I can't cut it in music anymore. You dismissed my accomplishments. You mocked my relevance. And you did all of it with this smile on your face, like you were doing me a favor. That's not pushback, Lara. That's a character assassination. The production crew had completely stopped moving now. Cameras sat unmanned. Boom, microphones dangled, forgotten. Everyone was watching this confrontation play out like spectators at a car crash, unable to look away. Maybe if there wasn't so much to criticize, I wouldn't have had so much to say. Lara shot back, her arms still crossed defensively. You want me to apologize for pointing out facts? You want me to say sorry for not treating you like you're special? Well, I won't, because you're not special. You're just another celebrity who thinks they're above criticism. Michael Strahan put his hand on his forehead, clearly stressed by the escalating situation. This needs to stop, right now. We're better than this. Are we, though? Blake asked, and the question hung in the air. Because it seems to me like this is exactly what some people think good television looks like. Conflict, drama, humiliation. As long as someone's getting hurt, as long as someone's being torn down, it doesn't matter who or why. That's entertainment now, apparently. Robin Roberts moved to stand between Blake and Lara, her presence a calming force in the chaos. Blake's right. This isn't what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to bring people together, to start conversations, to share stories, not to tear each other apart. Don't lecture me, Robin. Lara snapped, and even she seemed to realize she'd gone too far as soon as the words left her mouth. Robin's face registered surprise, then hurt, then something harder. I'm not lecturing you, Robin said quietly. I'm trying to salvage what's left of this situation before it gets any worse. Too late for that, Blake said, and he sounded tired now. Way too late. The damage is done. The words have been said, and no amount of backpedaling or damage control is going to change what happened here today. George Stephanopoulos looked at his watch, then at the control booth, clearly calculating how much of this had been captured, how much would need to be addressed, how much would inevitably leak. We need to cut to commercial. We need to regroup. We're not live, Lara said sharply. None of this is going out. It doesn't matter. It matters to me, Blake said simply. It matters that this happened. It matters that you thought it was okay to treat someone this way. And it's going to matter when people find out about it, because trust me, they will. Things like this always get out. Is that a threat? Lara's voice went up an octave. Are you threatening to go to the press about this? Blake shook his head, a sad smile on his face. I don't need to threaten anything. The truth has a way of coming out all on its own. And the truth is that you used your platform to bully someone who came here in good faith. That's going to speak for itself. Bully? Lara repeated the word like it tasted bad. You're calling me a bully? That's rich. That's really rich coming from someone who's made millions singing songs about drinking beer and driving trucks. Don't talk to me about substance when you've built a career on the most superficial music in the industry. And there it was, the final straw. Even George Stephanopoulos winced. Michael Strahan actually took a step back, as if physically distancing himself from what had just been said. Robin Roberts closed her eyes and shook her head slowly. Blake stood perfectly still for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost eerily so. And now we've arrived at the heart of it. You don't just think my career is declining. You don't just think I'm desperate or irrelevant. You actually have contempt for what I do. You look down on country music, on the fans who love it, on everything I've dedicated my life to. This was never about asking tough questions or having an honest conversation. This was about someone with a superiority complex using their position to put someone they consider beneath them in their place. Lara opened her mouth to respond, but Blake held up his hand. Don't. Just don't. Because anything you say now is just going to make this worse. I'm leaving. I'm walking out of here with my dignity intact and my conscience clear. Can you say the same? He turned and walked toward the exit, his boots echoing on the studio floor. The crew members parted silently, creating a path for him. As he reached the door, he paused and looked back one final time. You know what I hope, Lara? I hope that someday you sit down and really think about what happened here today. I hope you ask yourself if this is the kind of person you want to be. If using your power to hurt people is really worth whatever satisfaction you get from it, because I can promise you this: success, fame, all of it means nothing if you lose your humanity along the way. And with that, Blake Shelton walked out of the Good Morning America studio, leaving behind a panel of stunned co-hosts, a shocked crew, and one host who still stood with her arms crossed, her face flushed, insisting to anyone who would listen that she had done nothing wrong, that she was just doing her job, that Blake was being oversensitive. But the looks on everyone else's faces told a different story. The uncomfortable silence that filled the studio after he left spoke volumes. And the way Robin Roberts quietly gathered her things and walked off set without a word to Lara said everything that needed to be said about who had really been in the wrong. The studio lights still blazed overhead. The cameras still sat ready to roll, but something fundamental had shifted in that space. A line had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Words had been spoken that couldn't be taken back. And everyone in that room knew they had just witnessed something that would be talked about for a very long time to come.